Hey there everybody, Sage Apapam here, founder of the School of Evolutionary Herbalism. And in the process of becoming an amazing, effective herbalist, you gotta know not just how to use your plants holistically, nor do you just have to know how to assess a person holistically to figure out what the root cause of the problem they're facing is, but you also have to have a truly holistic herbal medicine. You have to have the most potent, concentrated, effective medicine that you're going to give them that's going to get the results that you're looking for. And this involves a process of not just determining what the appropriate form of medicine is that you should administer, whether that's an infusion or a decoction or a tincture or an oil or some sort of topical agent or a powder, but it also involves the way in which the plants are prepared and making sure that when you are preparing medicines that you're creating the most potent form of medicine that's going to encompass the holistic property of the plant. And by the holistic property of the plant, I mean not just, the most concentrated amount of, biochemically active constituents and stuff like that, but that it's going to address the whole person, that it's going to address their physiology, it's going to address their psychology, and it's going to address the soul. And one of the main ways that I work with plants in order to make sure that my medicines are going to be the most concentrated is through the integration of astrology. And what's so cool about astrology is that it gives you a pattern for understanding the true holistic nature of the plant, of understanding the energetic forces that operate through the plant that have an influence on the wholeness of the person. So astrology gives you a way of not just classifying and understanding the plants, and not just a way of understanding the whole person and what's going on with them, but it also gives you an understanding of time, right? That everything in nature is changing, right? It's like the only unchanging thing is that everything is always changing. And there's specific energetic qualities that flow through different times and different spaces. Obviously, one of the most straightforward ways of understanding that is just by looking at the seasons and the changing of the seasons. But when we look at traditions of medicine, we see that they have an understanding of time not being linear, right? That time is spiralic, it's cyclical. And that they have a way of relating the nature of time, the seasons, the days, the times of day to specific energetic forces in life. So for example, in Ayurveda, they understand the seasons and the times of the day based on the three doshas, right? Of Vata, Pitta, and Kapha. Chinese medicine, they've kind of fractalized time according to the seasons and times of day based on the 5 elements. And a lot of people think that we don't have a model for understanding the spirit and the energetics of time in the West, but actually we do, and that is through astrology. And astrology gives us a very specific pattern, a very specific map for understanding the specific energetic qualities that are flowing through a particular time and a particular space. And when we link astrology and herbalism, we see these plants are in relationship or correspond to these certain astrological forces. When we couple that with the timing of astrology, we therefore have a system that allows you to harvest and to prepare your herbal medicines in accordance with these, the way I see it, archetypal forces, these spiritual qualities of time. So there's 4 primary ways that you can work with astrology in terms of your medicine making process. And the first step is you have to learn how to see the relationship between a plant and a particular planetary force in astrology. And, you know, the way a lot of people tend to approach that is looking it up in a book, right? So they say, okay, I want to work with cleavers, for example. Well, I'm just going to go to, you know, a book that maybe has, you know, a big list of herbs and what planet is corresponding to them. And while that can be helpful to a certain extent, I think it kind of misses the whole point of an Astro-Herbalism system, or really the whole point of alchemy, which astrology is one of the sister sciences of alchemy. And it's said that the true practice of alchemy cannot be achieved without the use of astrology. So the whole premise of alchemy is that you're seeing these astrological forces directly in nature, in people, in plants, in situations, right? That you're able to not just memorize astrology up here in the head, but you're able to perceive it directly through the heart. And so this process of determining a correspondence between a plant and a planet is not just a simple, it has red berries, so it's ruled by Mars, or the flower looks like a sun, so it's ruled by the sun. This is a very in-depth process of learning to see and understand the essence of that plant. And through that essence of the plant, it's going to have a relationship to a planet that's going to reflect or manifest on a lot of different levels within the plant. So from its habitat, its morphology, its taste, its medicinal actions, its organ affinities, its energetics, its psychological and spiritual properties, all of those things are going to reflect this essential nature that is encompassed by that plant's planetary ruler. And so I get into this, I don't have time to really dig into this in a whole lot of depth in this video, but if you're interested in learning more about this dynamic of this connection between plants and planets, be sure to sign up for our Astro-Herbalism mini course, which is running right now. This is a totally free training series where I'm going deep dive on the connection between astrology, medical astrology, and herbal medicine, so that you can ultimately have a highly effective, refined, precise system of preventative medicine and transformational healing. So click the link on this page to register for the Astro-Herbalism mini course. It's totally free and you're going to love it. So anyways, first step is determining that plant to planet correspondence. The second step, once you understand that we're using the example of cleavers, right? That cleavers correlates to the planet Venus. And so now what you want to do, that's going to tell you the optimal timing of your harvesting and of your medicine preparation. So the first part of that is the days of the week. So each of the 7 days of the week correlates to one of the 7 inner planets of astrology. And, we still have some residue of this in our language, right? And how we term these days of the week. So, for example, Sunday, right? Or Saturday, Saturn Day, or Moon Day, Monday. The rest of them, for those of you that maybe speak or familiar with some of the Romance languages, they're very much reflective of those planetary names. So French, Italian, Spanish, those days of the week, we see a very direct relationship to the names of the planets. So the correspondence between the 7 days of the week and the 7 planets are as follows. So Sunday is the day of the sun. Monday is the day of the moon. Tuesday is Mars. Wednesday is Mercury, for like in Spanish, miércoles, right? So Thursday or Thorsday, Thor, god of thunder, is Jupiter. Friday or Freya is Venus. And Saturday is Saturn. So we see that each of these days of the week is like generally governed by that planetary force. It's kind of an overarching quality of that particular day of the week. But to get more specific, to get more precise and refined with this, we have a third layer of this process, which involves planetary hours. So each day of the week is divided into very particular hours that correlate to the planets. And this is, again, very similar to what we see in Ayurveda and Chinese medicine, the way they divide times of the day based off of the elements or the doshas. But it's a little more specific here with astrology because we're working with 7 planets. Now, there's different systems of planetary hours. You've got fixed systems and flexible systems. I prefer flexible systems because they move with the changing of the seasons, right? That, 7 a.m. in the middle of February is very different than 7 a.m. in the middle of July. And so the way these flexible systems of planetary hours work is that, you calculate from sunrise to sunset, how many minutes are there, you divide that by 12 and you have 12 planetary daylight hours, and then you go from sunset to sunrise of the next day, add up all the minutes there, and divide that by 12 and you have 12 nighttime hours. And each of those hours moves according to a certain pattern based on the Kabbalistic tree of life. And so what we see is that typically sunrise, the moment of sunrise of each day, is ruled by the planet that rules that day of the week. So for example, today's Wednesday, and sunrise was about 7:05 this morning. And so at 7:05 was the beginning of this new day, and the planetary hour of that sunrise is Mercury, right? Because today is Wednesday, which is ruled by Mercury. And they move in a certain order. So it goes from, if we're starting with Mercury, it'll go Mercury to the moon, and then it's going to go Saturn, Jupiter, Mars, the Sun, Venus, Mercury, Moon, Saturn, Jupiter, Mars, Sun, Venus, Mercury, Moon, etc. And so it moves in that order. And so what we see is that the planetary day is like kind of a generalized energy. The hour is kind of like a laser beam. It's a very focused, energetic quality that's specific to that moment. And so, for example, if we're working with our cleavers, then we want to pick it on Friday, which is ruled by Venus, at the Venus hour. Now, the fourth way that you can use astrology to work with your medicine making and with your harvesting is by following the moon. Now, the moon is the closest planet to the Earth. It's making its full cycle in about 28 days, moving through all 12 signs of the zodiac, and changing signs every 2 to 3 days. And so one of the ways that you can work with the moon is, the first way is you can look at the parts of the body that plant works on, right? What organ systems does that plant work on, and what sign of the zodiac does that organ system correspond to? So with cleavers, we see it primarily working through the kidneys and the urinary tract and the lymphatic system. So if you wanted to enhance cleaver's function on the kidneys, you could harvest it when the moon is in Libra, which rules the kidneys. If you wanted it to work more through the bladder and the lower urinary tract, you could wait until the moon is in Scorpio, which rules the bladder and the urinary tract. If you want to focus it more on the lymphatics, you wait till the moon is in Pisces, which rules the lymph. So this is one way that you can focus where in the body the medicine is going to work and anchor a very particular archetypal force into your medicine that's going to drive it into the corresponding part of our astral body. And that's really the premise of this whole work, right? Is that we're preparing medicine that is going to work through the astral body. And the astral body, I know it sounds really new agey, but it's basically the Western equivalent to, when in Chinese medicine they talk about like the meridians and the points. And I think it's very interesting that there's 12 meridians in Chinese medicine, which actually directly correlate to the 12 signs of the zodiac in astrology. And in Ayurveda, we see they talk about like nadhis and chakras, right? The energetic organ systems, so to speak. And this is what the astral body is, in the Western equivalent to those. And so when you're preparing medicine astrologically, it's going to function through the astral body, which is going to directly affect your physiology, your psychology, and bring about what in alchemy they call, you're like magnifying the initiatic virtue of the plant. Or the way I tend to translate initiatic virtue is the evolutionary function of the plant. How is this plant affecting directly the soul and facilitating in the soul's growth and development through healing karmic patterns, ancestral patterns, epigenetic patterns, etc., so that ultimately we can further our growth and development and harmony with those archetypal forces represented by the planets of astrology. So I know that was a little tangent. So we've got following the moon through the signs. You can also follow the moon and its relationship to the ruling planet of that plant. So for example, Cleaver is ruled by Venus. You could wait until the moon is conjunct Venus. And boy, if you could get a day where on Friday at the Venus hour, the moon is conjunct Venus, that's going to be an incredibly powerful medicine, because that Venusian force is incredibly strong in that time, in that space, in that moment. You can also wait for what are called like beneficial aspects to Venus. So for example, when the moon is sextile or 60 degrees away from Venus, or trine, which would be 120 degrees away from Venus, that quality is going to be magnified and very, very strong within the medicine. So these are some of the ways that you can incorporate astrology into your work with herbal medicines, specifically focusing on your harvesting and your medicine preparation or pharmacy, by magnifying these astrological principles. And, from the alchemical perspective, they say, each plant kind of correlates to one of these particular planets and is actually like a channel through which that planet works through. And so the whole premise of alchemy is that you're preparing the medicine in accordance with that archetypal force that kind of governs that plant, or is that plant's constitutional ruler. And so in this way, you are magnifying that property of the plant, and when someone ingests it, it's going to target the corresponding part of their astral body. And it makes me think of a quote from Paracelsus. It's kind of a mixture of quotes, and I'm probably not quoting it precisely accurate, but the basic premise of it is that Paracelsus says, the medicine must be prepared in the stars, and that the stars will become the medicine. For it is they that complete the work of the physician. And this is really what alchemy is all about. They say in herbalism we're harvesting plants, but alchemy is harvesting planets. You're harvesting celestial forces, these vibrational forces of nature, and imprinting it into the medicine so that ultimately it's going to have a very deep level of medicinal influence on that person in ways that goes beyond the body. It's affecting the body, but it's also affecting the psyche and the soul, and ultimately bringing about this transformational level of healing that I think a lot of people are looking for in their life at these times. So this is a little bit about one of the ways that you can integrate astrology and herbal medicine, and ultimately how astrology enhances your practice of plant medicine and making it more precise and specific and effective. So if you're interested in learning more about the synergy between medical astrology and herbal medicine, I know I mentioned it earlier, but I want to encourage you to sign up for the Astro-Herbalism mini course. This is a totally free training session that I'm moving you through at this time. Registration for it is totally free. There's a link on this page. Click there, enter your name and email, And there's 3 super in-depth lessons in the mini course that I'm going to be rolling out over the next few weeks, where I'm covering the 5 primary ways that astrology takes your practice of herbal medicine to a whole new level of specificity, precision, and accuracy. We're talking about how planets and the forces of astrology influence your health, your constitution, your psyche, your organ systems, and how through astrology you can actually create protocols to prevent the onset of disease before it ever takes root. Also opening up how to look at your birth chart and understand your chart from a medical perspective, so again that you can strengthen your constitution and prevent the onset of disease, and also providing that evolutionary qualities on the soul and healing of the psyche and the emotional patterns. So check out the Astro-Herbalism mini course. This is happening right now, so be sure to scroll down, click the link, register for the mini course. This is an awesome training, and I look forward to seeing you on the other side, reading your questions, your comments. I'm going to be in there answering them all myself personally, and I just want to thank you so much for taking the time to check out this new issue here on the Evolutionary Herbalism blog. And if you're listening to this on the podcast, be sure to head on over to our website at evolutionaryherbalism.com. If you're watching this video on YouTube or somewhere else, be sure to head on over to our website, evolutionaryherbalism.com, and get in that Astro-Herbalism mini course that's happening right now. So I look forward to seeing you in there, and until next time, take care and be well.